Hi there, sixth graders. So today we're going to be reading chapter 9.2 on Greek political systems. So you should have your social studies textbook open. Also, I would like for you to have your chapter 9.2 Cornell notes. You will notice that we are only reading a few sections of the chapter of 9.2. We'll be reading Explore Section 3 on Ancient Greek Democracy. We will be then reading Explore Section 4, What Made Athens Powerful? What was daily life like in Athens? Explore Section 5 about Sparta, a military oligarchy. Explore Section 6, Life in Ancient Sparta. And then finally, the summary, how did the form of government impact daily life in Athens and Sparta? So we're looking at the differences of daily life in Athens and Sparta in chapter 9.2. Remember that if at any point I'm reading too fast, you can always stop or pause, reread, add to your notes when you need to. So we're going to start with Explore Section 3, Ancient Greek Democracy. And we're going to be looking to answer the question, how did Greek democracy work? So we're going to skip this comparison chart because we're taking our own notes. Okay, so if you can follow along with me as I read aloud. Athens' new style of government was a direct democracy. Every qualified citizen could vote. Any man could be called to serve on the assembly or on the jury. Most democracies today are representative democracies, including the United States. In a representative democracy, the people elect representatives such as senators or members of Congress. These representatives make decisions and create laws that mirror the interests of the people. So I'm going to highlight that Athens' new style of government was a direct democracy. Okay, every qualified citizen could vote. Now remember, that didn't mean everyone was a citizen in ancient Greece. Citizens were men who were either landowning men or they had served in the military, and they could be called to serve on the assembly. So keep that in mind. A representative democracy is what we have today, okay, in the United States. The details and procedures of Athenian democracy changed over time. However, there was a basic structure. A council of 500 men was chosen by a lottery each year. This council was similar to the Congress of the United States. Council representatives created laws. They acted for the good of the citizens of Athens. Unlike the US Congress, the council did not pass the laws. Instead, the assembly voted on the proposed laws. The assembly was made up of citizens from every social class. The first 6,000 citizens who were eligible to take part and arrived at the meeting could take part in the assembly. So I believe that it is important to know that there was a council of 500 men chosen by a lottery, that the council representatives created the laws. I also think it's important to highlight that the assembly voted on the proposed laws and that the assembly was made up of men or citizens from every social class. Oh, here we go. Only about 20% of the population of Athens was citizens. Only free men who were 18 or older were considered citizens. Women were not counted as citizens. So that's important to note. They had none of the rights that male citizens enjoyed. However, if both of a woman's parents had been born in Athens, she could marry an Athenian citizen. She could refer to herself as the wife of a citizen. She could pass citizenship along to any sons she had. Some traders and other workers living in Athens were not born in Athens. They were born as metics. They did not have the rights of citizenship and could not own land. However, Athenian citizens sometimes paid metics to work on their land. Citizens also used enslaved people to do some of the work in their homes and businesses. Enslaved people were at the bottom of the social hierarchy in Athens. They were not citizens and they had even fewer rights than medics. So I think that it's important to highlight medics. Okay, we know that they didn't have the same rights as citizens. They also had enslaved people to do their work, kind of like Mesopotamia. We know that in Mesopotamia, oh, sorry. We know that in Mesopotamia, they were also at the bottom of the hierarchy, the social hierarchy or the pyramid. Okay. All right. Down at the bottom, you can see the kind of the remnants of a theater in Athens. So we know that drama and theater was very important to ancient Greeks. All right, so now we're going to go to our notes for Explore Section 3. So what is a direct democracy? A direct democracy is a form of government in which all people or all citizens come together to pass laws and make decisions for their communities. What type of democracy do we have in the United States? In the United States, we have a representative democracy. The people elect representatives to make decisions and create laws. Describe the basic structure of Athenian democracy. So we know that they had a council made up of 500 men chosen by a lottery each year. The council representatives created laws. They also had an assembly in that structure. The assembly was made up of citizens from every social class, made up of 6,000 citizens. And in the assembly, the people who attended the assemblies voted on the proposed laws. And if you attended the assembly, you were able to vote for the laws. Sometimes slaves were sent out to get more citizens to come to vote. What were the Athenian citizen requirements? Only free men who were 18 or older were considered citizens. Typically, they were landowning men or they served in the military. Define medics, and that's medics with a T. Some traders and other workers living in Athens were not born in Athens. They did not have the rights of citizenship and could not own land. So you had to be a citizen in order for you to own land in ancient Athens. So that is Explore Section 3. We're going to go back to our Discovery Textbook and move on to Explore Section 4 about life in Athens. One thing that you will learn after reading this chapter is that life in Athens and Sparta were very different. They had different societal roles, they had different governments. So, what made Athens powerful? What was daily life like in Athens? Let's begin. Athens was located near the sea. The surrounding area had little farmland of good quality. It was easier for Athenians to travel by ship to trade for food and other resources. As a result, Athenians found their strength in sea trade and in their naval fleet. Athens became wealthy based on its trade. It traded with Greek city-states and other civilizations around the Mediterranean Sea. So we know that it was located near the sea. It didn't have good quality farmland. That's important. So Athenians traveled by ship to trade for food and other resources. So we know that they started to grow and develop a strong naval fleet and good sea trade. So because of that, Athens became wealthy based on trade. Okay, so all of this is important. There is a picture of Athens. Athens was the first capital city in Europe, and it continues to be a really strong modern day city. Athenian culture. The people of Athens were able to trade for the things they needed. They could spend less time working and could focus on cultural pursuits. Cultural pursuits would be things like education, art. Athens became a center of culture. Athenian artists created lifelike statues. They made pottery and decorated it. They wrote plays. They danced and played music. They designed elaborate temples and other large buildings. Philosophers in Athens debated and discussed important ideas of the time. This climate of debate and discussion was part of the Athens democratic system. All citizens were expected to play a role in government. They all needed to be aware of the important issues of the time. Okay, so one thing we know is that people in Athens were able to get trade for the things that they needed. Athens became a center of culture. Culture includes, like I said, art, literature, music. So we know that philosophers in Athens debated and discussed important ideas at the time, of the time. All citizens were expected to participate in government in some way and know the important issues at the time. Okay, societal roles. Much of the daily life of Athens centered on the business of trade and the arts. Men took care of all the daily responsibilities of their business and their homes. They shopped at the market. Men also spent much of their time meeting in the public squares to discuss business and politics. The men of Athens had free time because enslaved people took care of the crops and the homes. Because the men took care of most of the business outside of the home, the women of Athens rarely went into public spaces. They were expected to stay home. They were expected to do chores and raise children. Part of the children's education was to learn about these roles. All right. So, men, societal roles for men is that they took care of daily business. Okay. So they did the shopping, they took care of they took care of all of the things that they needed to do that required them to be in public. Okay. Athenian men had free time because they had people who were slaves to do the work for them. Women of Athens, they rarely went into public spaces and they were expected to stay home, do chores, and raise the children. Okay. And now we're going to learn about education. Boys were taught to read and write and to take part in cultural life. As they grew, they became traders, artisans, and merchants. They actively participated in the culture and politics of Athens. When a boy reached 18 years of age, he took the oath of citizenship. He became a full participant in the daily life of Athens. So we know that this is important, guys. We know that boys in Athens were educated, they learned how to read and write. When they grew up, they became traders, artisans, and merchants. They actively participated in culture and politics. When a boy reached the age of 18, he was considered a citizen, and they participated in daily life in Athens. Girls had fewer choices and opportunities. They did not go to school. Okay, so that's important. They were not educated to read and write. They stayed home and were taught by their mothers how to keep a home and raise children. So I'm going to highlight that in pink. Even though their ability to participate in government was limited, women were important to the religious life of Athens. They could become priestesses. They often led the daily religious ceremonies that took place in the city state. Okay, so we know that they could become priestesses and were important to religious life. All right, so let's go back to our notes. Explore section 4. What made Athens powerful? What was daily life like in Athens? So where did Athenians find their strength? They found their strength in sea trade and naval fleet. So they were able to build a strong navy, and a navy requires um, strong boats in order to travel on the sea. What allowed Athens to become a center of culture? People of Athens were able to trade for the things they needed. They could spend less time working and could focus on cultural pursuits. Cultural pursuits, remember, are the arts, music, pottery, um, all sorts of things, education. How was life different for men and women in Athens? Men took care of all the daily responsibilities for their business and their homes. Women expected to stay home, chores, and raise children. How was life different for boys and girls in Athens? Boys were taught to read and write and to take part in cultural life. As they grew, they became traders, artisans, and merchants. Girls had fewer choices and opportunities. They did not go to school. They stayed home and were taught by their mothers how to keep a home and raise children. In which area of Athenian life were women important? So we know that women were important in Athens because they raised children and they were important to religious life. They could become priestesses. And we know, we've talked about in class that people in ancient Greece believed in gods and goddesses. So that was an important part of their life. So the next explore section we're going to read is 5 about Sparta. And you will see that they had a very different life. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next chapter. Greek political systems, again, Sparta, a military oligarchy.